Billy Napier unexpectedly having a hole to fill at the DC position as Patrick Toney and tight ends coach William Peagler both leaving to join the Arizona Cardinals staff. Now, Napier, though, moved pretty quickly, hiring Alabama inside linebackers coach Austin Armstrong to be the Gators defensive coordinator. And when it's time to talk Gators, there's only one place we go, and that is, of course, to the Swamp. And we welcome in our next guest here, and that is Jacob Rudner of Swamp247. So first off, new hire here. What are your thoughts?
I like the move. He's young, 29 years old, was the youngest defensive coordinator in FBS football when he was at Southern Mississippi, but he was very successful there. Those defenses ranked quite highly in their ability to generate sacks on third and fourth downs. And those are things that Florida really needed to improve on. So I think the move has a lot of promise. Obviously, there comes some risk with hiring such a young and inexperienced coordinator. But at the end of the day, this was an unexpected vacancy created on Florida's coaching staff, and they had to make a move. So Billy Napier went with somebody who is young, who is promising, and somebody who he's familiar with as well.
I'm going to ask this next question, though, to Brandon, because I know that you were all over this story. What were your initial reactions when you saw the move that Billy Napier made?
Yeah, not too surprising because of the connections there. They both coached together at Louisiana previously, and then they both come from a Nick Saban kind of tree. You saw Austin Armstrong get hired away from Southern Miss as the coordinator there to Alabama to be the inside linebackers coach. But Austin Armstrong was kind of sitting and waving in the wind for a couple of weeks at Alabama because he didn't know what position he was going to coach. He didn't know who his boss was going to be at defensive coordinator. And then they hired Kevin Steele away, a guy that he had never really met before. So he was in a situation, yes, he's going to be groomed by Nick Saban and by everybody I've been told was probably going to be the next DC in line there at Alabama. But now he gets to go run his own show and do it maybe a few years earlier than he expected. So why not go and take it? It might be a little bit of a risk, sure, especially for him, but he's young right now. He can bounce back from it. He's only 29 years old. It's going to be very fascinating to watch. And listen, Nick Saban was praising the heck out of Austin Armstrong during the season. Remember, Alabama faced Southern Miss previously, and he was saying that they had an SEC type of defense when they faced them. Their run defense was top 10 at that time in the season. And then, as Jacob mentioned, the sack production, top 4 in the country. They were getting pressure on the quarterback and stopping the run. That's how you win in the SEC. It's a good hire.
Austin Armstrong, one of the young stars in coaching, rave reviews from everybody who's been around him. But this is also a relationship business. Has an incredible relationship in history with Billy Napier. A lot of people today were talking about the timing of it and how it had hurt Florida losing their defensive coordinator at this point in the season. He moved on Austin Armstrong so quick. It makes me wonder, did he kind of nudge a couple guys out so he can get the guy in that he really wanted anyway in Austin Armstrong? So you never know with these moves and what happens, but he got his guy. That's the guy that he's going to take to the party with him as they look to turn the Florida Gators back into a national championship contender. And we know that is the expectation in Gainesville.
Yeah, so you hear the high praise from Brandon saying that it's coming from Nick Saban and that he has an SEC-type defense, and you hear all the stats and Saban thinking that he could be the future at Alabama. Obviously, now that he goes to the Swamp, that is not in the cards at the moment. But Jacob, is he ready right now to be a defensive coordinator in the SEC?
I think only time will tell, honestly. This is kind of one of those situations where it's going to be trial by fire. Like Brandon said, he does not have a lot of experience. There is no defensive coordinator experience on his resume. But that being said, there is, the track record is there in terms of what he was able to do at Southern Mississippi. Like Brandon said, Nick Saban has been high in his praise on this hire. And so I think that it could go a long way for Florida. That being said, there's going to be no way to know exactly how good he is until games start being played. I do like the potential for the move, though.
Jacob, for me, Florida's been in the crosshairs across college football for most of this offseason. When we talk about the Jaden Rashada saga, NIL, and for a lot of reasons, recruiting is being steered by NIL these days. I'm wondering, what does the situation look like there in Gainesville now with NIL, with the collectives there? Are they getting better on the same page? What does the future look like for that as they try to improve the recruiting effort?
Brandon, I would be lying if I said it was entirely clear at this time. I think that there are still a lot of questions to be answered. I think that Florida needs to still try and figure out exactly who's going to run its collective. There have been rumors. Perhaps there could be a change in leadership after the recent Jaden Rashada saga. If that happens, it'll be interesting to see exactly in which direction they go. But, Billy Napier said on signing day in February that NIL remains a strength at the University of Florida. And there's no reason necessarily to dispute that other than what we've seen so far. Jaden Rashada does not end up at the University of Florida. For whatever reasons throughout his process, things don't go right. Florida still was able, though, to lock up a top 15 class in the country, several highly regarded prospects. Their transfer class was quite good, especially on both sides of the line of scrimmage, offensive and defensive line. I'll be interested to see, though, how things look in the 2024 recruiting cycle. Are there other hiccups? Are there reasons to be concerned in terms of, are they able to bring in the top level talent, which, as we know, is at least partially dependent on NIL. I don't have any reason to think that Billy Napier and the people around him are not going to solve the problems that they encountered in this last cycle. But to say it's not something to keep an eye on would be a lie. It definitely is a topic that we'll have to watch moving forward here.
And Carl mentioned just how much of a relationship business it is. So I'm curious, you're there. What is the relationship like between Billy Napier in Florida and the collectives there that you kind of have to work with?
Yeah, I think it's going well for the most part. I mean, it would be, I think it would be difficult to say that there wasn't some strain put on the situation based on the Jaden Rashada situation. That stressed people out. Billy Napier has a five-star, fringe five-star, four-star quarterback locked into his recruiting class. It's somebody that they're counting on, and that guy doesn't end up on campus. So do I think that could be, a hot-button topic moving forward for the university? Sure. But do I think that it's strained any relationships beyond repair? No. I think that Florida is in a position where they're going to have to move forward quickly. Billy Napier said that they're planning on pursuing they're going to target a transfer quarterback in this upcoming cycle in the spring. And so we'll just kind of have to see how that goes. But as far as, is there, a tenuous relationship between Napier and Florida? No, I don't think so.
All right. Speaking of Billy Napier, it's been a hectic offseason, to say the least, and of course having to go to the well and hire a new defensive coordinator. But that's why we brought Jacob in to tell us exactly what is going on down in the swamp. But we actually have a clip from earlier, about a month ago. We talked about Billy Napier and just what that relationship was like with the fan base right now. Because as we know, these standards and the expectations are as high as ever at Florida. And that's, what you sign up for when you go to a place like Florida. So let's roll the clip about what our friend Carl Reed had to say.
Nobody has given their coach more smoke than the Florida Gators fan base. They are really all over Billy Napier. And I don't understand why. I guess, they lost a couple of recruits. Florida Gators expect to win national championships. But I think that Billy Napier is going to get that thing rolling and get it going in a good direction. But, man, his fans are all over him. I don't get it. You got to give a guy some time. You got to let him get a couple of his recruiting classes in. But we are in an age where nobody wants to give everybody time. Everybody wants it in the microwave. Nobody wants to wait on the oven anymore to heat it up.
Man, it says January 25th, but that was black and white video. Apparently was from way, way back in the day. So, Carl, I'll ask you, with today's latest news, you still agree with the man that was in the video?
Well, yeah, I think that you need to give him some time, but I'm not the person who's going to ultimately make the decision. When you wake up and you decide you want to be a football coach, and this is something for all the boys and the girls to know, you want to coach football, you're going to win or you're going to get fired. That's the game. Nobody knows that better than the guys that are coaching. Billy Napier passed up on a few SEC jobs because he wanted a job where he felt like he can compete for national championships. That's the Florida Gators. They have a history of winning championships. Steve Spurrier, Urban Meyer, you're going to get a statue built or you're going to lose your job. That's the stakes. Then this is the life that you choose when you want to go coach football at that level. You get paid handsomely for it. There's a lot of pressure on coaches who know they have to win. There's coaches all over the country right now that aren't sleeping well, that aren't eating well, because they know they have to win football games or they're going to get fired. And everybody knows that losers are all different, but winners are all the same. And so you have to make a decision what category you're going to be in. Some guys get all the breaks and they win. Some guys don't get any breaks and they lose. Hey, you get a nice parting gift. You get to walk with 30, 40, $50 million in most cases if you don't win. But this is what you signed up for. They expect national championships, and you got to get them moving in that right direction if you want to remain the head football coach.
The pressure's never been higher at Florida, and for that matter, across college football. My friends at Football Scoop track all this, the hirings and firings, as well as we do. And the average start date for all FBS coaches that are head coaches right now is 2020. The lifespan of a head coach is shorter than ever in college football. And for Billy Napier, that means he's got to get things rolling here the next 2 years, or he might be out of a job after year 3. That's just the nature of the business. And for that matter, the nature of the business for these administrators. They're tied to the hip with these head coaches nowadays. So Scott Strickland knows he's got to get something out of Billy Napier these next couple of years, or he could maybe even be in trouble with his job. The good news for Florida is that the recruiting has been there. There's still been top 15, as Jacob mentioned. But the problem is can you get in that top 10? Can you take that next step? Can you get in the top 5? And so, listen, Billy Napier has one more spot remaining as of right now on that staff after William Peagler left for the Arizona Cardinals as tight ends coach. Can he get a guy that's like a killer on the recruiting trail to kind of amp things up a little bit further for them? That'll be interesting to watch. And I think he upgraded at defensive coordinator by hiring Austin Armstrong. Patrick Toney took over the defense there. They were bad last season, couldn't get to the quarterback. They were inconsistent. They were in the 90s in a lot of categories in the rankings. They will get better this year because of the returning talent they have and the influx of talent they've got coming in. And I have a lot of confidence in Austin Armstrong. Yes, he's 29 years old, but look at the numbers his defense as coordinator put up at Southern Miss. It was, in Nick Saban's words, an SEC-type defense. I can't wait to see what Florida does this year.
Brandon, you talk about the rope that the Billy Napier has. Rudner, in your eyes, what you see down in the swamp between the fan base and Billy Napier, how long is that rope amongst the fan base?
Look, I don't know that I could say it much better than Brandon or Carl did. I think that it's all about progress, and progress determines the size of that rope. And I don't know that we can really fairly determine that based on just year 1 results. Sure, they finished under 500, and that's very disappointing for this fan base, and it should be. They expect wins, and they deserve wins. But I think that we need to see still what's going to happen when Billy Napier gets his personnel in place with his new defensive coordinator, whom he's familiar with. What he does at the tight end coaching position. These are all things that are going to determine exactly how long that rope is and what the expectations are moving forward. One thing, though, I know is for certain is we need to see progress in year 2. The win total needs to increase. I think that the recruiting needs to improve, like Brandon said. Can Billy Napier get into the top 10 or the top 5 with his upcoming class? And what does that turn into on the field? That's what matters at the end of the day. I believe that Billy Napier will demonstrate improvement. There are a lot of people around Gainesville who are confident in him still, and they should be. So we'll have to see. But I do think that things aren't looking in the wrong direction right now in Gainesville. I do still have confidence that Billy Napier will put this together.
Yeah, we'd be
how much rope does a guy have in a week, Emily? Every fan base in the SEC is 1 week.
Yeah.
That's the rope that everybody has. If you're a head coach in the SEC and you lose, your fan base wants you fired. If Alabama loses, Saban is too old. If Hyper loses, they don't play enough defense. I don't care what the fan base is. 1 week is all the patience that an SEC fan base has. But maybe that's why they say it just means more in the South.
They need to spend this entire spring and summer at Florida figuring out the collective there for NIL. That has been a mess, and for whatever reason, they can't get on the same page, and it keeps getting pumped up as a strength for them by Billy Napier, but it's very clearly not, because it's been embarrassing, all the stuff that's been getting out from Jaden Rashada and even stuff beyond that. They've got to get on the same page with that, and if they do, recruiting actually will improve just for getting that in line. They've got to figure that all out.
Too many cooks in the kitchen for the NIL collective with the Florida Gators. Too many guys trying to be in charge. It has been shameful, Brandon. A lot of names involved. We don't need to air the names out on the show, but they do have to be able to get some type of working order going to get that thing, or they're going to kill the future of their football program if they don't figure that out.
Along those lines of the NIL and collectives, this is obviously a new problem that coaches are having to deal with, Billy Napier in particular, with everything that's going on there. Not to mention the state of Florida football and the Power Five has never been better with what Florida State is doing on the recruiting trail, what Miami is doing on the recruiting trail. Not to mention they added a Power Five school in the state this year with UCF jumping up to the Big 12. So, Jacob, from your perspective, I mean, how are the external factors that Napier is dealing with now, how are they different than maybe what Dan Mullen had to deal with as head coach at Florida?
Well, it's been what we've talked about mostly for the show. I think that NIL is the biggest factor in terms of something that Billy Napier has to deal with right now, that Dan Mullen either didn't have to deal with at all or had to deal with in a much smaller capacity than Billy Napier has to deal with right now. Florida just made a change in legislature that allows coaches to get involved in the NIL discussions. I think that will help. I think that, like Brandon and Carl said, too many cooks in the kitchen right now with Florida's NIL. But as I said earlier, it sounds like there will be changes made to the structure of the Gator Collective. Plus, one thing that I think will truly help them out is being able to have involvement from the school side of things in order to be able to kind of dictate what happens and facilitate all of these transactions to some degree. What exactly that looks like, I don't know. I think that we're all kind of learning on the fly here, but I do think that that would be a benefit to the team. So does Billy Napier have to deal with something that Dan Mullen didn't in NIL? Yes, but I actually think that that could be to his benefit as we move forward here.